show versus tell, and what is actually the difference? Hi, I'm Hananya Leclerc. I am a multi-genre writer who shares tips and tricks and talks about her life. Now, without further ado, let's get into the video. When you're thinking about showing versus telling, it is probably one of those topics that is talked about a lot in the writing community. A lot of people have opinions on this. A lot of people feel like you have to show when you can't tell. And a lot of people, including me, sometimes struggle with what actually is the difference, or what am I supposed to be doing in this case, or am I doing it correctly? Am I writing it in a way that people will enjoy reading it? And I think the most important thing when you think about show versus tell is finding a good balance between them. So show versus tell is kind of a concept that is referred to a lot by writers, and it's also kind of a difference between showing something that a character might do or something like that versus just telling the reader what this person feels or thinks or stuff like that. You kind of want to potentially show the emotion that they're going through. And that is, I think, the one that I enjoy most, or that I kind of think about most when I think about show versus tell in my own writing. So show would be kind of really showing the physical effects of the emotion, whereas tell would be kind of he was angry and that is it. Whereas show would then kind of be maybe he's clencing his jaw, or maybe he is, fisting his hands next to his body, and that can show kind of that he's frustrated and angry. So you can kind of show those things. You can also show if someone's uncomfortable. They might shift from leg to leg when they're standing, or they might bounce a leg if they're nervous, or they might bite their nails, like stuff like that. You kind of want to show visual clues of you having the emotion with a character, but not necessarily just flat out telling the reader this is what they're feeling, period. You kind of want to have the character really go through the emotions of that. In my opinion, that makes me more engaged with the story and makes me feel like the emotion is more real if I kind of see the visual clues for that emotion. So that is one of the big ones in show versus tell that I usually refer to when I think about show versus tell. But show versus tell can also go into kind of description or background information. Another example I have here is, for example, a kind of background information on what day it was or what the weather was like. And the tell version would be kind of, it was a summer day in July and the city was bustling with activity. And that would be kind of the tell version, whereas the show version would kind of be more like this. And I'm gonna grab my phone because it's a little bit longer. Would kind of be like, the sun beat down mercilessly, the pavement radiating waves of heat as people bustled through the streets. Children laughed and played in the park, seeking refuge in the shade of towering oak trees. So that gives you a lot more description of where it is set in. The question then becomes, what is necessary for a story? Because I don't actually mind the telling part of this if it's just, it was summer in July and the city was busy. Now let's jump into the actual story. Or if you are more of a descriptive writer and you really kind of like painting a clear picture of your world and what it looks like and what it feels like and what it smells like or stuff like that, then you might want to go for the show version. Now, I'm not saying that either one of them is bad or good. I'm just saying that it really kind of depends on what kind of book you're writing or what your writing style is like. For this weather specific one that I kind of told you guys about, I like both. So I like both versions of this. I think in some cases the show version might work really well. In some cases the tell version might work really well. If, for example, you're really trying to get into a conversation, then you might want to do the short tell version. But if you're really like painting the picture of the park and the weather and everything that's surrounding them, or just in general going through maybe a park and that is kind of what you describe along the way, I like that. So it kind of just really depends on what book you're writing. I want to give you guys a quick example of what I would say telling would be the better option than actually showing. So a lot of people say don't tell, show, or stuff like that, where they're kind of don't do this. But at the same time, there are points in the book, or there are scenes or certain things that you might want to tell and not necessarily show. So One of the things that I can think of, for example, if I was leaving my house and I was grabbing my keys and I was like rushing, I don't need to go into detail of, okay, I walked the hardwood floors to grab my keys that were gold and had a keychain with this and this and this on it, and then, you know, it feels like a metal texture but there's dirt on it, or there's grains of sand or whatever, before I grab the hardwood door with the doorknob that is golden or whatever. Like, I don't need to go into all that detail. At least in my opinion, you don't need to do that. You can just say, you know, like, she rushed out of the house grabbing her keys in the process. Like, you don't have to really describe every single detail, because too much detail is not nice and it will just take away from your story, especially if it's like a rushing kind of scene. I prefer less description if it's like a rush, or there's like excitement, or there's a chase, or like someone like that. Then you don't want to be like, oh, he chased her through the dark alley. Like, that's fine, but you don't want to be like, oh, he walked over the cobblestones chasing her with the, you know, leather shoes. Like, maybe something like that will help the reader to really visualize it, but at the same time, like, you're chasing her, just get to the point, you know, or just keep going, instead of being like, okay, he took a step forward and he's rushing, but at the same time I don't feel like he's rushing because you're giving me all this description. So it's a little bit of a what do you do, what do you not do with telling versus showing. But I think this rushing out of the house and grabbing the keys is kind of a good example of telling is fine in that sense. Like, you don't have to go into the full details of that process. I think those examples kind of outline in what case you can use show to kind of convey more of the emotion or more of the sense of the character, versus when you can just do tell and it doesn't really matter too much, or it might be even super distracting if you do the show in certain cases. So I would say, think about your book, think about the situation you're in, and just kind of evaluate. Sometimes it doesn't come naturally to you to do it straight in the first draft. So for me, show versus style is usually something I look at when I'm doing the second draft of my book, or when I'm going through and editing or revising the parts that I have written, and kind of see, okay, well, I did this and that's more telling, but I kind of want to show that instead of telling it. Or I will write it in a show version and then see if I like that better or not, and kind of see what works for you. Some of the things that you could do is maybe even Google like examples or scenarios, or think about, okay, if I have this, how would I describe that in a telling version or in a showing version, and which one do I like better? It kind of depends on your situation and the part of the book you're in, what book you're writing, what kind of is your writing style. But I would say really consciously think about, could I show this instead of telling the reader? And would that be preferred or not in certain cases? I hope that even though this video was short, it is still helpful to you and that you enjoy watching it, and hopefully you will continue sticking around for these videos and all the how-tos that I'm sharing in this playlist. So hopefully see you in the next videos. If you are not subscribed yet, please consider subscribing down below and support my channel. It doesn't cost you anything. So hopefully I will see you in my next videos, and leave a comment if you have any questions.